Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Damn Podcast. I am your host, Angie Machado. Joined with me, as always, BeaverBlitz beat writer Jake Hedberg. Ty was supposed to join us, but Ty had something pop up, but we will see him tomorrow. Jake, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Spring practice starts tomorrow. Pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, spring practice, go 2 weeks in March and then have a couple weeks off and then back at it to finish up with April in the spring game. But this was just a super important day to jump on the eve of spring practice. I think this is a really big spring camp for Oregon State. Mm-hmm. Second one under Coach Bray. He's got his feet under him. He knows what to expect. So we are going to talk spring camp, everything. We're going to talk newcomers. We're going to talk new coaches, some of the weights. I popped up the weight changes that Jake actually posted in the lodge at BeaverBlitz, but some of them are eye-popping. Talk newcomers. We're going to talk about who's in and who's out for spring practice. So some injury type stuff. And then we're going to kind of take a 10,000-foot overview of the offense, maybe some strengths, some areas for concern, what we're going to be looking for. And then I really want Jake's take at the very end. I want to hear what are the key things that he's going to be looking for, especially this first 2 weeks. Then we'll take a break. Then the next 3 weeks going forward. And then we have a slew of damn questions as well. So we will get to those. So it'll be a busy show, but if you're online and watching us live, make sure you drop any questions or comments along the way. I see a couple already, Joe Swaim and Brian Miller. Shout out to you guys. Thank you for joining us live. It is a fun time. Spring camp, you guys, if you've watched and listened for a while, it's not my most favorite time of the year, but I'm excited this year. So lots of new faces. Jake, how are you? Are you excited for tomorrow?
Oh yeah, I'm stoked. It's always a fun time. It kind of means that the school year is starting to come to a close and summer's just about here. So excited to get going. It should be an exciting camp. I think the talent Oregon State's acquired through the transfer portal paired with what they have coming back, I think it's a team that is going to be a lot stronger than what we saw in 2024.
Yeah, just like I said, the expectations too, and Coach Bray was able to kind of go out and see what he needed. So spring ball, just a little kind of the housekeeping and coverage for you. It starts tomorrow. It runs the first 2 weeks this week and next week. Then the Beavers take finals week and spring break off, and then they'll come back and the first 3 weeks of April they will finish up. Goodness, Jake, that means you are almost done with winter term, which means you are down to spring term. Are you getting a little senioritis yet?
Yeah, don't tell my mom this, but I've been checked out of school for a while, so I'm
don't tell mom that. Okay.
I'm ready to get wrapped up and start the next chapter.
Mama Hedberg, just close your ears. But that brings a point too that I want to make, because we have been in preparation for Jake graduating and moving on with the next phase of his career. You'll be seeing some new faces popping in with our coverage that begins tomorrow. So we're expanding coverage. First of all, you saw, if you were on BeaverBlitz today, we brought on Spencer Newell to BeaverBlitz writing features. So he is going. He had a feature today. We're calling him Backstory. So not 30 for 30, but kind of just the backstory of some of your favorite athletes and coaches at Oregon State. Started things off with Trent Walker from walk-on from Beaverton High School to wide receiver 1 heading into this season. So check that out. We kept it outside the paywall so that everyone can read and enjoy that work. But we're bringing on Davis Stone and Alyssa Pike, both pretty much handpicked by Jake. So Jake, I know you're going to do a great job in getting these guys up to speed, as will, myself. Ty will be there, but we'll all be there tomorrow at first day one. So excited for that, but just wanted to keep our listeners and our readers and everybody kind of apprised of what's going on with the BeaverBlitz team. Actually, let's just say we're expanding because Jake's not going anywhere for the time being, and bringing on a few new faces as we get them up to speed. But okay, so this was eye-opening to me. We're going to jump right into the off-season weight changes that were on the updated roster. A lot of pluses, a lot of minuses. There are a couple that popped out to me. I guess my first one is the transfer tight end Riley Williams from Miami checking in at 275. How anxious, Jake, are you to see him and how well he can move at 275?
Yeah, I'm definitely curious to see how well he carries that weight. I mean, that's a pretty damn big tight end. I had heard he had weighed in from a source at around 275, 280, and I wasn't really sure if I believed that because he was listed at 240 at Miami, and now here we are, and the source was correct because he is currently listed at 275. So, that's a lot of weight. Hopefully he still has that.
That can't be all good weight either.
No, I would assume not. I think ideally for a guy that's 6'5" and a tight end, you kind of trim that down to 265, 260 by the start of the summer. So hopefully he can still carry that weight relatively well and it doesn't impact his game.
Another one that popped out to me was center Van Wells has lost 22 pounds, went from 315 to 293. How do you think that will help him this season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming it was definitely a planned thing to try and get Van to drop some weight, and I think it might help Van be a little bit quicker off the ball. He's still a pretty strong guy, so I don't see it impacting that in a negative way. But if he can keep that strength and he becomes quicker, I think it just makes the Oregon State offense even stronger.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the true freshmen, that's a typical move when you start seeing the true freshmen start adding weight after a year. Mm-hmm. Callan Guttridge gained 12 pounds. He's up to 208. Cornell Hatcher, running back, has gained 14. He went from 203 to 217. Salahadin Allah, +9, went from 206 to 215. So those two running backs, I kind of like where they're sitting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Who stood out to you, either good or bad?
I think a guy we haven't talked about yet is Shamar Michael,
mm-hmm.
Going from 6'3", 208 to now checking at 224. That's a guy who came in and contributed at a pretty high level as a true freshman, and now he's put on 15 pounds just about, and now he's got that extra strength. I think that's just going to elevate his game and take that game to the next step. So I think that's a solid pickup. That's it's a super deep outside linebacker room, and by putting on that extra weight, it's going to only be beneficial to Shamar.
I also like Olu has jumped from 238 to 251. So edge rusher there. 238 was a little light for him.
Yeah.
I like that. And the other one that kind of popped out to me was Cy Badrawale.
Up 16.
Went from 175 to 191. So that should help him immensely. Anybody else popping out to you that?
I think Takari jumping up to 280. That's a guy who we've talked a lot about. He's a guy who's a super talented pass rusher, just tore his ACL, so he wasn't able to play last season. I think if he's healthy, him paired with Shamar, Nico Taylor, all those explosive pass rushers, it's gonna be pretty scary. And then two other guys that kind of caught my attention were Tavita Pomea dropped down just about 20 pounds to 310, and then Jacob Schuster put on 20 pounds to jump up to 345. So those are two of probably Oregon State's top 3 defensive tackles at the moment, and that's a pretty significant change for really both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have Schuster now at 345.
It's a big guy.
Yeah, and then Pomea is 310. So. And like I said, it's going to be fun to see these guys tomorrow and just see how good that weight looks. Was it too many pizza? Was it too much pizza, or is it
good weight?
And someone like Schuster, he was out with some injuries, so sometimes Jimmy Valson's gained 12 pounds, although that just puts him up to 202. So not super worried about that one. Anybody else pop out before we move on to the newcomers?
Tyler Valton keeps on putting on weight. He's up to 378. That's a very large human.
It's a large human.
It's a big offensive guard.
So that's going to be offensive line. We're gonna talk about that too here in a little bit. Okay, so newcomers. One of the key pieces, I think, of spring, as we've kind of evolved with the whole transfer portal being such a big part, is the new faces that show up. Oregon State also, and I didn't put this in our rundown, has several new coaches that we're going to be seeing for the first time. And Coach Gunderson, offensive coordinator Gundy, gosh, talk about a shakeup to his side of the
offensively.
Yeah. So he will be breaking in a brand new running back coach with Coach Pickering, a new tight end coach, although Coach Heck is not new to the program. Offensive line coach coming in Coach Kavanaugh. So a very familiar face coming back to Corvallis, and a new wide receiver coach coming in with Pat McCann, who comes to Oregon State from Fresno State, where he was wide receiver and offensive coordinator. So lots of Coach Langsdorf is back as well as an analyst
too. Yeah,
lots of experience. Some experienced veteran guys coming in on that offensive side of the ball. What are your thoughts on that and shoring up this offense?
Yeah, I think with Coach Pickering and Coach Heck, they've been here a little bit longer. They're more established, just being hired in late December compared to a week or two ago. But they're guys who've established themselves as pretty strong recruiters. I think we saw Coach Pickering come out and close the deal with LaMarcus Bell out of Lake Oswego. So that was a great, strong start for him. And then, talking to all the tight ends that have been extended a scholarship offer, they all love Coach Heck. So, I think that speaks to the job that those two have done. And then Oregon State got out and got two more experienced guys and, Coach Kavanaugh, who was Kyle DeVan's mentor. So, I think having that continuity, I bet there's going to be a lot of the same terms, the same pretty similar scheme stuff. So I think it's not going to be as hard on the offensive linemen as it would have been transitioning to a different offensive line coach. And then, Coach Pat McCann's an experienced coach. He's coached some really good receivers at Fresno State, and he has play calling experience as well. So, he's a guy that brings a lot to the table. I think he'll be a strong presence on the recruiting trail as well.
Yeah, I love the mix. You have the young, a couple of young guns, and then you have some real good veterans in the mix. And I just think that adds, as long as they all can work real collaboratively. And I think Coach Gunderson is going to be one of those guys that can really bring in a lot of different opinions and ideas as they look to kind of tweak and expand that offense and make it more explosive. Defensively, some shakeups, more along the lines of just who's coaching where. Do you want to talk a little bit about the defensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changed a lot. Oregon State lost defensive coordinator Keith Hayward. That was a loss for sure. And now Oregon State's promoted Coach Kyrie Marshall from defensive quality control analyst to take over the outside linebackers. And, he was kind of doing that already, but now it's a official on the field title. And then to take over Keith Hayward's job as safeties coach, the Beavers bumped back Coach Cooper, who did a solid job with the inside backers last season. As a younger guy, he's a great recruiter. I think he has a really bright future in front of him, and I think he's going to be a future defensive coordinator type guy. And now he's kind of broadening his defensive knowledge, and he's coaching the safeties and the cornerbacks. So excited to see how that transition goes for Coach Cooper. And then the big story is Trent Bray taking back over the Oregon State defense. He's a guy who's proved he's an elite defensive coordinator. I mean, the change from Tim Tibesar to Trent Bray was almost overnight. A team that gave up 39 points to Colorado and then went out there and really shut down teams, including Jaden Daniels, who's the Heisman Trophy winner, and he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So I think that's only going to be beneficial. And then Trent Bray also brought in Coach Rob Agee again, the old Idaho head coach, and he's going to kind of help out Trent with the day-to-day aspects of being the head coach and kind of be the overseer of practice to allow Trent to focus some more on that defensive side of the ball.
I love that move. I mean, I love if you know Trent Bray, he loves coaching defense.
Yep.
I mean, that is like his true love. That was the one thing I was a little worried about when he took head coaching job, was him maybe moving away from the actual on-field coaching. So I love the move. I mean, he's still head coach. He'll have his hands in that defense a little more. And then you get an experienced veteran in Rob Akey, who has ties to, Craig Bray and, Trent's dad and Dennis Erickson. Yeah, there's a lot of Northwest ties there. I love it. I love that move. We have a question. Brian Miller asks, who is your favorite hire of this cycle?
I think Coach Heck's my favorite hire. I think he's a coach that's on the rise. I've got to know him pretty well. So I think he's a great coach, and I think the future is super bright for him.
I'm excited. I have not met Coach Heck, so I'm excited to meet him this spring. I guess selfishly, I'm super excited to see Coach Cav back, because I think Coach Cav is just one of those, just a true gem of a person, and just can bring so much a wealth of information to that O-line room. I'm excited about Pickering. I think that might be an valued, underknown maybe coach, but Oregon State has had some really good luck with some running back coaches in the past 5, 6, 7 years. So excited to see what he can do. But all in all, I think the hires that were made this offseason, very, very strong.
Agree.
Now let's talk newcomers on the field, because there's a lot of them. And I think we would be remiss if we did not start with maybe the biggest name that all eyes will be on tomorrow, and that's quarterback Malik Murphy. Who are you excited to see besides, I'm sure you're excited to see Malik Murphy, but who else of this new group of newcomers are you excited to see tomorrow?
Yeah. Obviously Malik Murphy's the top guy, all the hype around him and, the anticipation. But, outside of him, I think Rajon Davis is a guy that kind of comes to mind. He's a guy was a super sought after kid coming out of high school. He played at SC, didn't really live up to expectations, but I think having Trent Bray coaching him, he could be a guy that, kind of turns some heads, and I'm excited to see him in person. The high school tape is very impressive, and I thought what he put on the field, and granted, not a whole lot of it, but I thought what he did show at SC was pretty promising.
Yeah, I have some connections there in Southern California at Mater Dei, around USC, and the word on the street about him is that he fits Oregon State's defense to a T. Mm-hmm. Maybe a little undersized in the eyes of the USC, D coordinator. And then you get caught up sometimes at these big schools with the whole NIL and who you're paying the big bucks to and who needs to play, because they're making the cash. So I'm excited. I agree. Malik Murphy is one that I think we're all going to be watching. And it kind of takes me back, Jake, to your first day with BeaverBlitz, which was 2 years ago, first day of spring camp. And we were in the Indoor Valley Football Center, and it was Aiden Child's first day. And watching that pass to, was it Zach Card?
Yeah, it was
David Wells.
It was Card.
It was Card. Yeah, I thought it was
with Childs, and it was DJ's first day too.
You're right. So it was a big day then, but Malik Murphy obviously is one. Of course, we won't see a ton of live, but they've been throwing, and so I'd like to see just see him air it out a little bit. Rajon Davis is on my list just because I think he fits so well. Oregon State lost 2 starting inside linebackers, so they really need someone in the middle that can come in and jump in, can pick things up quickly, and I think Rajon is going to be that guy. Riley Williams is one. I was excited to see him, but now that he is coming in at 275, I want to see how much of that is good weight and how well he moves. And then 2 freshmen that are in, Blue Dantzler and Trey Glasper, are 2 guys I think have a huge potential. And freshmen are, you just never know what freshmen are going to kind of take that step and be ready. And we've got a long way to go. But those 2 being in early in the spring just gives me thought that we might see them come fall as well. But those are my guys. Hang on, we have a comment. Brian Miller says, please keep an eye out for Clemens. He was exciting at the end of the year when he seemed back at full speed.
Yeah, I think if Clemens can carry that momentum over to 2025, and I think that paired with Trent Walker and Taz Reddix is really a scary receiving core, especially having what should be a much improved passing attack with Malik back there.
Yeah, that is, like I said, we have a question here. Now we're talking about guys that are leaving, I guess. Why would Jordan Anderson go to Sac State? To become the number one target? Yeah, I mean, I think he was buried on the depth chart, and some guys don't have a lot of patience and want to see the field. We'll see. Hopefully it works out for him. Yeah, I think Clemens was one, and I think maybe in all the talk, the pre-spring talk has been one that isn't talked about a ton right now. But you're right. I think he finished the season really, really strong. I think he was finally at 100% health-wise. Yeah, Taz, him.
Jimmy back as well.
Jimmy's
Yeah.
back.
I mean, really, I think that receiver room's deep. I wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Zach Card or David Wells, like one of those faster guys, bump from the outside spot and try out some slot.
Yeah, I mean, it is a deep group, and maybe with it's interesting because last year people were talking about the receivers not maybe doing as they had hoped. How much of that was on the quarterback play, and how much of it was on the receiver play? So it'll be interesting to see now with a new quarterback who maybe steps up. Who's out for spring ball? A couple though that we are expecting to see back. I mean, if you remember, last season became the walking wounded. It was so many guys out. So back, long time, we have not seen Micaiah Tongue. He is expected back. Long snapper Dylan Black and then Aiden Sullivan appear to be back in full for spring practice. Possibly available for the second half. We're looking at receiver Jemai East, Takari Hickle, and Cord Shaw. And as of right now, we're not expecting Jimmy Valson, Tyler Moreno, Tyler Bolton, Nick Norris, Kelsey Howard, Noble Thomas, and then Jeremiah Iwane.
I'm curious about Jacob Strand. That's a guy who missed most of last year, and we haven't really heard one way or the other. But with the offensive line guys, with Tyler Bolton, Tyler Moreno not being able to go, I think if the Beavers could get Strand back, that's going to be a big bolster.
I'm just pulling something up here. Hang on, I'm pulling the roster up. There was one other name. I'm just trying to hang on. Oh, Kobe Singleton. He is not on the list. Do we
expect him to go? He should be good.
Okay, he should be go. Okay, so let's start talking offense, Jake. What are your concerns? Early March, granted, I mean, there's a long way to go, but right now, what are your concerns with the offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think we just touched on it a little bit, but I think the offensive line depth, particularly in the spring, Oregon State has three guys who, in my depth chart I just dropped today, three guys I had as starters who are either doubtful or not going to play at all in the spring. There's going to be guys who are going to get every opportunity in the world to kind of get that crack with the first team and show the coaches what they can do. But I mean, even then, that second group of the offensive line, it's going to be a lot of guys that are redshirt freshmen and haven't played, or guys that are walk-ons and again haven't played. So I think I feel like it may look a little rough in the spring, just not having guys that Oregon State trusts and can count on to play. So that's going to be something I'm keeping an eye on to see how those younger offensive linemen develop.
To me, that is the key right now. That is probably my biggest concern. Well, it is for the offense, is the O-line. Not necessarily. I don't necessarily think it's bad that we'll see a lot of young guys getting time this spring, because it does build depth and it gets those guys kind of up to speed. But they're going to have to replace some big time talent. I mean, Joshua Gray, who had a really good combine yesterday, Tank. So and then Stark. So Grant Stark. So 3 starters you're replacing.
Flavio as well. It's 4.
Flavio Gonzalez. You're right, 4. So really, you're only returning your center. And then there's some guys that have playing time that have been on the injured reserve. So to me, O-line is crucial, but it's not a concern yet. But I just want to see how the wide receivers look. I just think they totally underperformed last year as a whole. And like I said, was that quarterback play? Was that wide receiver play? Was it a combination of all the above? That needs to improve. So How about the strengths? What are you looking forward to as the strengths of this offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think the running backs. I think Oregon State's going to have a real good 1-2 punch. Oregon State fans know what Anthony Hankerson can do. They know what he brings to the table. He's a guy who, just went out and got 1,000 yards last season. He's a really good back. Now you add in Salahuddin Allah, who has reportedly been killing it in the offseason. He's been putting up some crazy numbers in the weight room. He's a guy who he's probably the guy I'm most excited to see. I think he's going to take the biggest jump from year 1 to year 2. I think he's a guy who might be the most complete back we've seen at Oregon State in quite some time. And that's saying something. I think he might be the most complete back since Jermar Jefferson. He's got the size, the speed, the strength. We saw flashes of it last season as a true freshman, but now I feel like he's going to take on a heavier workload as a sophomore. And I think in spring camp, he's going to get a lot of work to kind of rest Hankerson. And then I wouldn't be surprised to see it be more of a 1A, 1B kind of deal this upcoming season instead of a, clear-cut number 1 with the clear-cut number 2.
How much do you think they have those guys going this spring? Do you think they rest them? Do you think we see more Cornell Hatcher?
Well, the thing is, there really isn't a whole lot of depth in that room right now.
Yeah,
They've only got 4 backs. They've got those 2, and then Cornell Hatcher and Jake Reichel. So I'd imagine, we kind of see Hankerson and Salah split first-team reps and then have Hatcher and Reichel take the rest of the work. But, that's just my kind of guess. We'll find out tomorrow, I guess. But I think keeping those 2 guys healthy is going to be really important because it's setting up to be a really special 1-2 punch, I think.
Yeah. We have not heard anything either regarding Jam Griffin getting a medical hardship.
He's not
coming back. Okay. I see he's been rehabbing, but so that you heard it here. He's not coming back. But I love, like you said, I think I agree with you. And the things we've heard from coaches and people close to the program is Salah could be a little special back.
Yeah.
And like you said, we've already seen what Hankerson can do. So excited about that. Now, defense. Where's your concern lie here? I'm curious where your concern is because I've got 2 concerns, but I just want to hear what yours is. Actually, I probably have 3.
Mine's defensive line depth. It's kind of the same thing. I think there's a whole lot of uncertainty. Even the guys that played last year weren't really overly impressive. The defensive line had its struggles last season. I think this year having that depth back, getting a guy like Nick Norris to come back, and then we're bringing in Tajay Holix from Western Carolina. I think having that depth and staying healthy, and then even Tygee Hill, he's still kind of a question mark, but it sounds like the investigation or the situations should be coming to a resolve sometime before this upcoming season. Mm-hmm. So hopefully Tygee's all set to go too, and that would be another big addition. So, I'm excited to see how those younger guys like Collins and Pomea have taken a step from year 2 to year 3, and hopefully they've improved and the defensive line as a whole improves.
Yeah. Joe Swaim in the chat says last year defense did not tackle well as well as in previous years. Yards after initial contact and missed tackles were very high. I would say a lot of middle linebacker missed tackles. It'll be interesting. So my concerns was D-line, just depth. Inside linebacker, middle linebacker, that some new faces there. Not to say that these guys are might not be a step up, just question mark there. And then edge rushing and getting pressure on the quarterback. I think that was a huge problem last year.
I think the edge room is actually the deepest on the defense, to be honest.
Okay. Is that your strength?
That's honestly my strength. I think it's going to be a lot better. I think those struggles weren't necessarily on them. I feel like there was a lack of interior push, which kind of made things harder on the edges. But I think, you don't lose anybody. You get
then getting Nico back is huge.
Then Shamar Michael, Zakiah Saez, get back Olu, and then you bring back Takari Hickle, who's a guy who I think is going to be.
That was like your top guy.
He's been very impressive. And then from there, you go into the transfer portal and get Kyle Wallen and Walker Harris. And those are 2 more guys I think that won't necessarily be starters, but those are guys that'll be contributors. And not to mention Andy Alfieri's full-time outside linebacker now, and I think that's a logjam in my mind. Like that's 8 guys who are going to play. So I'm kind of interested to see how it plays out, to see if Oregon State goes back to that, the 3-4 and, have 3 of those edge guys, or they stay with the 2-4-5 and have 2 of those edge guys. Because if they have 2 of the edge guys, that's a major logjam.
Okay. You said something that piqued something. So earlier when we were talking offense, you said that you felt Salahuddin Allah might be the freshman that makes the biggest jump between freshman and sophomore year. Now you also just brought up Michael and Saiz. Okay, those 3. Who you taking as making the biggest jump?
Well, it's year 3 for Hakaya.
Is it really?
He redshirted his freshman year. In my mind, there's 4 guys who I'm expecting to take a big jump, and it's the 4 guys that played a lot. I think all 4 of these guys will be starters or guys that play a lot. Sala, Shamar, and Dexter Foster. I think he's going to be really good. And then Exodus Ayers at corner. Okay. Well, I think he could be Oregon State's best cover corner this season.
Talk to me about the DBs.
Yeah, I think again, it's a deep group. It's just the depth. We kind of saw guys get thrust into action and get experience, and now that everyone's back and that depth has kind of started to materialize. I think the safeties are legitimately 3 deep with, you got Skylar Thomas, and then you got Jaheim Patterson, Tyrese Ivey, Jack Conne, and then Amari York and Harlem Howard are both back from season-ending injuries. And then the cornerback spot, you've got Kobe Singleton, Exodus, Mason White, and then you bring in TJ Crandall, Jaleel Tucker, and Trey Glasper, a freshman who I think is going to see some playing time this season. All of a sudden, the Beavers have some depth, and that's not to mention that nickelback spot, that's got Cy back, and you get Noble Thomas back from a torn ACL at some point too. So really, it's kind of the depth's coming together. We outside of Skylar and Nico, there hasn't really been anyone that's emerged as like stars or guys that you can consistently rely on. But I think you have a ton of depth and guys that have shown flashes. And if even 3 or 4 of those guys can do it consistently, then I think that takes this defense from very mediocre to a defense that could be pretty good in 2025.
And you brought up a good point going back to the D line. And I think so much of the success or failure of the defense is going to be up front in the trenches.
That's why it's my biggest question mark.
Yeah,
can they get that interior presence that, I think in Trent Bray's best defenses at Oregon State, that's what we've seen. In 2023, you had James Rawls, Hodgins, Joe Golden. 2022, you had the same deal. You had Simon Sandberg as well. And last year, Samisi was solid, and he still even struggled at times. Thomas Collins showed flashes but couldn't stay healthy, and that's why it's my biggest question.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, so in a nutshell, our 2 biggest concerns heading into spring ball is O-line and D-line, which
I think the trenches are the biggest concern.
But how does that make you feel, okay, when you know that games can be, that's really the pivot point right there. If Oregon State can figure out the O-line and the D-line, how excited does that get you for the 25 season? I'm very excited. I think this team offensively should be much more explosive. I think you're going to see a team that becomes more 2-dimensional. They're going to throw the ball some more, and they have 2 really good running backs. And I think they've upgraded in the tight end room as well. I think Jermaine Terry was very good, but he was underutilized at times, and I do feel like that was because of the quarterback play. Now you have Bryce Caulfield, 2 talented 4-star tight ends. And then I think a guy that could be kind of primed for bigger if he stays healthy is Cooper Jensen. I think this offense could be much more explosive. Yeah, I agree. And then also can help shore up the O-line too with some run blocking as well.
And again, the portal's not over either. There's going to be a second wave. Who knows? There could be guys who are at other schools right now that could wind up at Oregon State competing for a starting spot. We saw them bring in a portal guy after spring camp last season. Didn't work out necessarily, but Trent Bray's done it before. So,
and I think they'll constantly be looking. It'll be interesting too to see if any of those new coaches that have all come from other institutions have maybe guys that jump in the portal that they could recruit, whether that be an Oregon offensive lineman
Fresno
for
State.
a Fresno State. So those are things that Jake and I kind of watch, kind of our little spidey senses, kind of watch that kind of stuff. So it's exciting. Hopefully the weather's decent tomorrow and they can be outside. Okay, first 2 weeks of camp. We've already kind of talked about, where they need to improve, but where are your eyes going first practice tomorrow?
Hard not to say the quarterback room.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's usually the answer every year, that there's a new quarterback on campus, and it just so happens that it's a quarterback who was one of the top quarterbacks in the transfer portal, and he's a guy who should come in and, not to make expectations too high, but based off what he's put on tape, he's a guy that should completely flip Oregon State's passing attack. He's compared to what the Beavers put out there last season, he's significantly better. And not even that, I'm excited to see the step Jabari Johnson's taken from year 2 to 3, and then we really get our first extended look at what Callan Guttridge can do as well.
Okay, so looking at Malik Murphy, he's a big bodied 6'5".
Yeah, he's a big guy.
240? Is he?
235.
235. Okay. More of a body type of like a DJ. I mean, DJ was 250, but a bigger bodied.
Yeah, he's taller.
Yeah, he's taller than DJ, but complete polar opposite of Jabari Johnson.
Yeah. I mean, he's the complete polar opposite of Giovanni too. So I think it'll be kind of funny going from, my first year we had DJ and Aiden Childs, guys that were, pretty physically intimidating guys. And then last year we had Giovanni and Jabari. Like, I'm not a huge guy, but I was bigger than both of them. And I was like, okay, that's probably an issue. If Cole Branson's our biggest quarterback by a country mile. And now going back to a quarterback that's, built like a linebacker or tight end at 6'5", 235, I think it's a good thing.
Do you think, we haven't seen Malik Murphy run much at his prior schools. Do you think we see him any designated runs, or do you think we see maybe a chance where Bari comes in periodically and runs?
I think he's got the ability to. I think it's more of just he doesn't like it as much. But I think the way our offense ran against Washington State, kind of having Jabari in that role where he could, come in and be a change of pace quarterback, which is something not a lot of schools have. I think that's something to watch, and it'll be interesting to see if that's kind of. I'd assume it won't be utilized during practices at all because there's no reason to run Jabari and get him hurt. But I think he's the best running quarterback the Beavers have, and it's not particularly close. And I think he's one of the better athletes on the Oregon State offense, and they're going to try and find ways to get the ball in Jabari Johnson's hands. So I wouldn't be shocked to see that not a 2-quarterback system kind of come together, but just as a change of pace quarterback just to kind of keep defenses on their toes.
It's going to be fun. And I think we'll learn maybe not as much as we learn, in August, but spring camp is always one of those times that you can really, and see some of the younger guys too, get some reps. We've had a couple questions. So I do want to switch gears a little bit before we jump into damn questions and kind of back to football. There's been a question about your thoughts just on the early baseball season.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there?
It's been interesting to say the least. The first 5 games was great. And then, we've kind of seen them skid. They're 2-3 over their last 5 games. It's pretty surprised to see us jump up a spot in the top 25. But, I feel like right now what they're kind of missing is a Travis Mazzana type player, not on the field, but more of in the dugout, kind of that guy to kind of, light a fire and get them rallied up. I think Dallas Macias was a guy who was going to be that guy, but he's struggled. He's want to say 2 for 19, and I think he's kind of gotten in his own head a little bit. And I think, as a guy that the team kind of, rallies around, I think him struggling is kind of, keeping the whole team down. So hopeful, it's not to say it's Dallas's fault. I just think it's just the team, that's how any team works, is the team's leaders, they kind of follow the same wave. And I think if he turns it around, I think the locker room will rally behind them. And, it's baseball. It's a long season.
And baseball's a funny game too. You can play perfectly in a couple lucky hits or something. And
I'd rather play like this now than play like this in late May and June. So,
and hopefully
it gets them.
It gets a fire lit under them. And also, it also gives the coaches what they want to work on too. It gives you something to coach toward. If they were playing perfect in the early season, not perfect, but I mean, you get what I'm saying. So, no. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Keith, Go Beavs 2K, just wanted to know any predictions on team captains.
Ooh.
I think he's guessing maybe Skylar, Malik, Nico, Hank, Trent.
I'm going to go, it's a little early. I'm going to go
It's early.
Trent Walker.
Okay.
Skylar, Nico. I'm trying to think.
You think you get do you think a young guy like maybe a Dexter Foster jumps in there?
It's usually like we get to know them more through the Jack Conne is a guy I think will be a team captain. I think Conne will be one.
Okay.
There's kind of those guys that we kind of get to be around for a couple of years and kind of see them take that role. And talking to I know Trent wants to be a team captain, and that's a big goal of his. I think haven't really been around Malik enough to really know yet how he kind of operates.
Yeah, we need to see how they carry themselves, how they, interact.
But I think Trent's a sure bet. I think Nico, Skylar, Conne, and then probably one more on the offensive side of the ball. Could be a Hank. He's kind of a quieter guy. It could be a Van Wells, who's also a quieter guy.
Somebody has said Van Wells.
He's quieter though. I don't know. It's there's guys that like the Jaden Grants and the Helvin Jordans, where it's like you can tell that they are like the guys that they rally behind, and I think that's another thing we'll kind of be watching, is to see which guys kind of step up as the
because you do have more vocal. I mean, I can think of Jamar Jefferson. He was not a real vocal guy. Yeah,
and then you've got guys like Jaden Grant, who even back in high school, I remember him. I remember as a kid, Jaden was always like that. So, I think it'll be interesting to see who kind of steps up and takes those spots.
Great questions. Keep them coming if you have them. We have a basketball. That was a really good question. It makes you think a little bit. But I agree with Jake. I mean, sometimes you can kind of just see it kind of play out by who's. But then again, we also aren't in the locker room to see how that dynamic goes. Ben Smith. Basketball question. Any word on Polo coming back another year since he didn't go through senior day?
Yeah, I think as of now, they're anticipating him being back. And
we will have
Spencer.
Spencer just caught up with him today. I don't think there's any announcement on that. But I am excited for this interview. Spencer teased a little bit on his Instagram, just showed a little clip. And DeMarco Minor is who we're talking. He goes by Polo is his nickname. So he was a very thoughtful, the little clip that Spencer shared, you could just, a thoughtful kid, or a young man. He's not a kid. So anyway, be watching for that probably in the next week or so. Let's see. I'm just going through. Conne'd be a good pick. Kevin Klupinger. Have you heard anything about the upcoming media rights deal? Nothing yet. Not that I've heard. It should be coming though this spring, I'd imagine. Okay, so we do have questions in the lodge as well. Ron Wall has a question. Do you forecast a change in strength and conditioning techniques to improve the injury bug that seemed to hit us hard last year?
I think they'll tweak some stuff, but I feel like that's usual, is to tweak stuff up every offseason. I wouldn't anticipate any huge changes, And
you got to remember that the strength staff that was there last year was an extension of McDonald's.
Yeah, it was the same staff. I think it was just unfortunate. A lot of it was non-contact stuff that it was unfortunate. I think the odds of that happening again are slim, to say the least. And so far through the spring or the winter, I guess there weren't any major injuries. So,
but I'm sure. I think that is something too that staffs do. Coaches and the strength and conditioning staff is every offseason they stop, they go through the season, like, okay, what can we tweak? Or we had an exorbitant amount of knee injuries. What can we do to help strengthen, or what do we do for hips, or whatever it happens to be? But like Jake said, a lot of these injuries were non-contact, just freak injuries. So it happens. Brian Miller, how are we feeling about our punter?
Yeah, I think what we saw from AJ Windsor in the Sun Bowl 2 years ago now was promising. He's always looked decent in practice, and I think he'll be solid. Oregon State's turned out some pretty good punters the last couple of years. So, yeah.
To be Beav asks in the lodge, inside linebacker transition. Smooth?
I think so.
You think it's Rajon and Dexter? Are those
Yeah,
good?
I mean, I think Aiden Sullivan will get a crack at it. I think he was pretty impressive in the spring and the fall last year. Jairus is a guy who I think was more of a special teams guy last year, but he's been in the system for a year, so he kind of knows what he's doing now. And then I think the wild card in the room is Micaiah Tongue.
Yeah.
He was very impressive in his brief 2.5, 3 games at inside backer. I mean, he started a game, and then he just destroyed his knee. So I think if he can get back to how he looked 2 years ago, then that's a guy who I think could end up starting next to Dexter Foster. So I think I do think Dexter's pretty set in stone based on what he put on tape last season paired with his potential. And then from there, it's a battle between those 4 guys.
Yeah, but there's talent. I mean, that's the beautiful thing. And Micaiah, I don't is anyone. I mean, Beaver Nation probably should be rooting extra triple hard for him just with what he's gone through. Some pretty brutal injuries. He had injuries back when he was at LSU,
Georgia.
Georgia. Sorry, he was at Georgia. He's from Louisiana originally. So he had the injuries at Georgia. I'll never forget his first practice at Oregon State. His dad was there, and he tweaked his hamstring. Just first practice. So hopefully he's healthy, ready to go. Black Bandit, what tweaking of the offensive playbook do you think Gundy will implement to exploit and showcase Murphy's talents?
Yeah, I think we're going to push the ball down the field a lot more. There really wasn't a whole lot of that last season. It was more short, quick stuff to Trent and, more the intermediate stuff. But I think having a quarterback with the arm strength that Malik has, paired with, the receiving room that's got another full year of experience underneath their belts, I think you're going to see the Beavers push the ball down the field more and be more explosive in the passing attack.
His second part of that question is, has it been enough time for the new coaching staff, the wide receiver coach, running back, Coach Cav, et cetera, to learn and be able to teach the new offense?
Yeah, I mean, I think Coach Cav was probably on relatively the same page as Gundy. He was coaching here when Gundy was here.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine a lot of that lingo and scheme and all that jazz is pretty similar. And then, I think Pat McCann, he's a guy who is a pretty high IQ guy. So
and you got to remember, Coach, I mean, there's only so much you can do. I mean, these guys can learn it pretty quick. At the end of the day, the goal is still the same, to push it in the end zone. A lot of these things we answered throughout the tight. Who do you see in the wide receiver room breaking out as a big play guy?
Taz Reddix.
Taz, yeah.
I think,
he showed flashes.
Yeah. And, talking with people around the facility, I think Taz is a guy who's going to take a big step forward. And, it wouldn't shock me to see him kind of emerge as the second option behind Trent Walker, to be honest.
It's going to be a fun day. One other question, JEH58, opinions on Mountain West wanting to go to mediation. I think that's just the next step. I mean, it hopefully saves some legal bills of going to trial. Hopefully it expedites some things. I think mediation is kind of the way things go, especially when you want to keep it out of the courts. That could take a long time. Litigation can go on and on and on. Okay, so tomorrow, bright and early, Jake and I will be getting out, driving down to Corvallis. Jake, do you drink coffee yet? I can't even get you a coffee.
I'm not a coffee guy.
My goodness gracious.
No, I'm not a big caffeine.
Okay, well, I gotta see if maybe Davis and Alyssa, if you missed the beginning part, we'll have a couple new faces here joining our spring camp coverage team with Alyssa Pike and Davis Stone. We'll get them on a podcast here too, so you can see them. But we want to ease them into things and not throw them right into the fire immediately. But I'm excited. So there'll be 5 of us there tomorrow. We're going to
be half the media crew.
We're going to be half the media crew. BeaverBlitz.com will be half the media crew, but we will be there. So by afternoon, come back, start checking out BeaverBlitz for all the latest. We'll have it behind the paywall in the lodge. So if you're not a member, now is the time to get in the lodge and get all the latest insight and scoop. Official visits will be heating up here too, right, Jake?
Yeah, we've got 4 guys who are pretty. We got 4 lined up right now, and then expecting some more to kind of pop up over the next.
Coming in April for like.
No, I don't think we're starting until May.
May, okay, May.
Right now.
Couple names too that are familiar. There's a
Kai
Wheaton,
yeah.
Kai Wheaton. That is Kenny Wheaton's son, Marcus Wheaton's
cousin.
Yeah, second cousin. Because Marcus and Kenny are cousins.
Yeah.
So
cousin.
Anyway, there's been some fun back and forth on social media with that. Marcus, I think, is pretty proud of that. But I know he is locked in for an official visit, and there's some other guys locking in as well. So we'll be back to do some more podcasts here throughout spring camp. Appreciate you guys tuning in and listening. And until next time. Oh, I wanted to bring up one thing too, because it was on the thing, but BeaverBlitz just celebrated 23 years. Kicked off in March 1 of 2002. I took over March 1 of 2006. So
it's older than me.
20th football season. I'm just starting here. 19 years running and owning BeaverBlitz. So thank you all for keeping this little dream going. And we'll be back next time for another episode of the Damn Podcast.